Good afternoon, I guess good morning still. I seemingly can never get that correct. Really excited about this session today. This has been a partnership that we've been working on for a while now, and there's been a lot of exciting results, so we're very, very much looking forward to kind of sharing what we did today. This session is automation, optimization, and record-breaking results, which is a fun little title to kind of encapsulate what we're doing here. The goal of this session today is to hopefully give you guys a real view from the customer's perspective of what does investing in automation and optimization technology mean for logistics and truckload operations. So my goal here today isn't to do an OD pitch. I have a lot of great team members, and if you want to come down to our booth and learn more about OD, we'd be more than happy to answer those questions. And we're probably going to limit any sort of Q&A sessions today because I think you want to hear more from Brock than myself. A little background on myself. So my name is Daniel Powell. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Optimal Dynamics. We are one of the leaders in decision automation for trucking. So we help companies automate and optimize decisions from dispatch planning, load allocation, acceptance, all the way up to strategic analysis and RFP. One of the things that I wanted to get into before I let Brock introduce himself when we get into the session is just recap what we've actually accomplished together to kind of set the tone. There's been a lot of sessions here, and there are a lot of sessions coming up at the McLeod event talking about AI. AI. We all hear it all day. It almost gets to the point where it's nauseating, and I think it's refreshing to get a real robust view from the customer's lens and the real data. This team, through OD and the work that we've done together, they've driven up revenue per truck per week in excess of 20%. We just discussed before coming here that their solo drivers are now driving in excess of 400 miles per week through the optimization. They're now at a point where I actually checked when I was building this. 2 weeks ago, you guys were at 99.8% decision automation, and now they have one team member who reviews and executes between 1,200 to 1,500 decisions per week. I think it's actually one of the more exciting real case studies of AI within the industry, and something that I'm extremely fortunate to be a part of. So with that, Brock, if you can give yourself a quick intro, what you do, background on CRST, and then we can kind of kick this off.
Sure. Name is Brock Ferry. My title is Director of Operations at CRST. I've been with CRST for about 10 years. I've always been in operations-facing roles, so I started off as a dispatcher, then moved into the operations manager, and I've been a director of operations for the last about 4 years. So what I currently do is manage all of the company assets. That's what my team does. So I oversee all of the day-to-day dispatch and planning operations within the Capacity Solutions division. So that obviously involves load planning, and so that's how I got involved with Optimal Dynamics.
Awesome. I guess getting into a little bit of the questions, just to set the stage, because a lot of the people in the audience, a lot of people who think about diving into optimization, there's usually a lead up. So give us kind of a sense of what were the internal conversations going on at CRST before you guys actually sort of took this step forward to make these changes in the business and adopt this type of technology.
Yeah, so I think our decision was pretty much market driven. A lot of people are making these types of decisions because of the market. Things got really difficult back at the end of 2022, it seemed like. So about mid-2023, we started talking about using automation, and then we were also in talks with BCB Transport as well on acquiring their company, and they were actually an Optimal Dynamics customer. So we got a quick rundown from Scott Shapiro, who's our Vice President of Operations, and he pretty much sold CRST on the OD platform, and so as soon as that happened, that's how we got involved with Optimal Dynamics.
And then when we started kind of getting this kicked off, by the way, if you guys want to come in, you guys are more than welcome. A lot of, I think, people's perception of these types of projects is you kind of throw it over the wall and then magic happens. This idea of, this type of technology is a bit of a magic wand.
Yeah.
The reality is that isn't farther from the truth. So before we get into kind of the cool successes and changes that you guys made, after the fact, can you give people a little bit of a light of the bumps in the road and the learnings that we did together? Because I think when you look at operations, the best human processes aren't necessarily the best processes for systems. And those are different for every customer, and sometimes you kind of just have to learn through going through the process. So those first kind of 3 months, 4 months from go live, what were the kind of the biggest learnings? What do we have to change? What do we have to kind of adapt to kind of push the project forward versus backwards?
Yeah, I'd say we thought that we were just going to rip the Band-Aid off and see immediate results too, and that certainly wasn't the case. So you actually have to be set up the right way for OD to work. So OD is not going to fix your problems as an operation. You have to fix those yourselves, and then OD is just an enhancement to your operation. But our process used to be, so we have company assets, and then we have independent contractor assets, and then we also have brokerage. So the way it was set up before, all of our independent contractors had a load board where they could see 3 weeks out in the future of all the loads that were in the system. So I'd say the first week that we started using Optimal Dynamics, we saw kind of an increase, but then once the independent contractors found out that the company assets were using Optimal Dynamics, they just started booking further into the future. So the tool wasn't actually able to enhance our network and to run it the right way. So this happened, this went on for about 3 weeks, and results just started, going backwards, and then we said, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. We met with the OD team. We met with all the independent contractor management team and leadership, and said, hey, this is something that we have to do. But in essence, what we did was we created a waterfall effect where all the freight comes into our system, and then that way OD can optimize it for your company assets. So, and then once the company assets have been optimized, then it falls down to the independent contractors within a 7-day horizon. And then those independent contractors still have their load board, and they can book loads in off their load board, so they're not losing that autonomy there that independent contractors look for. And then finally, brokerage gets the last of it. So the leftovers, as we like to call it. As most trucking companies that have a brokerage, that's how they should operate. So,
and that was a really big, I think, win for us, being able to sort of control the data path. And I think when you deploy technology that's data-driven, especially when you're automating decisions and automating human decisions, ensuring that you're sort of controlling the path of decisions, I think is critical. Or you get this just like hands in the cookie jar, a little bit of chaos, and that's kind of what we experienced. And that goes back to, it wasn't necessarily that was a poor process before, it was probably the most optimal way to run when you had sort of like human decisions throughout the org. But then this idea of driving automation and optimization, you have to take slightly different paths if you're going to get the results that you're looking for. Another item that I think people miss as well, and I love the analogy of if you bought like an Uber driver a self-driving car, and then you just told him to continue his job, is sort of the focus that you had of your team, specifically Caleb. Can you go through the story of kind of moving him from the floor to an office and keeping him focused and making sure that his sole job was that quality assurance, quality review, and execution? Because I think that's a big step that many people who adopt automation technology don't do, and then they don't see that benefits that they're looking for.
Yeah, so I guess it goes back to before we even had Optimal Dynamics, we had 6 regional planners, and they all had different parts of the country. And so, compared to now, not a lot of volume of trucks coming into their region compared to now, because we went from basically 6 regional planners now down to 1. And so basically the process was at CRST, and probably a lot of you can relate to this, is, if maybe there's a load uncovered, and then maybe a customer service rep is asking your planner when is this load going to get planned, that type of stuff, and planners get peppered with that stuff a lot. So that process really didn't change when we switched to OD. Caleb would still get a lot of questions. He sat out on the floor with all the planners. So we condensed down to just Caleb as our OD planner. And then I have 2 swing shift planners that really are responsible for just retooling stuff as they happen in case of like mechanical breakdowns and stuff like that. So you go from 7 or 8 planners altogether down to 3. And so all of a sudden, Caleb's the only guy that's working Monday through Friday. He's getting a ton of volume from customer service and other folks that are out there, dispatchers, I need a load, customer service saying, when are you gonna plan my load, et cetera. And he just, and with the amount of volume, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but with the amount of volume of loads that he was responsible for reviewing and that kind of stuff, he just wasn't getting it done, or he just wasn't getting it done effectively. So I basically just ripped him off the floor and put him in an office. And I told him, you come in every morning, you shut the door, and then you get into load acceptance and you start just evaluating loads and just click through those as you see them. So,
Yeah.
And that helped immensely. So now really all those questions are getting shot to the retooling planners, which is what they're there to do.
Yeah, I absolutely love, we talk about the human effect when you adopt, broadly AI, but specifically when you adopt technology that's actually automating a human decision. Because at that point, it's going right into their world. And managing it from that executive level is sort of the make or break decision. Because in what I absolutely just loved him and is, I guess, the quickest person to ever get to a corner office at CRST history, probably, was how focused they were, but also the up-leveling of the job. It wasn't that the job was reduced, it was the job was up-leveled. And that can be done poorly, right? If that's not done right, then if that person feels that their job is being diminished, and then especially allowing the humans to do the edge cases that no systems or processes can really fix, but allowing them to just do that versus do that plus normal planning, I really liked.
Yeah.
So now that we're past that point, so we are able to get in, set up the data flows, critical component to driving the success. You retooled. What is life a little bit like for Caleb, super user within CRST? What does a day-to-day operation kind of look like for the most part?
Yeah, so he comes in and he'll do a quick run through of the board and see where there's some layovers, and so he'll get those issues over to our, we now have a backhaul coordinator, so he'll get those over to the backhaul coordinator. Previously it was customer service or just the whole operations team, but this is where we need to fill our gaps, but then he just dives right into load acceptance. So he probably spends the first half hour of his day in load acceptance, and what load acceptance is again, OD is looking at all the loads that come into the system. And really, we like to see an 80% load score on a load, 80% to 100. So we'll keep those on company assets. And I talked about the waterfall effect earlier. And then we'll send the other ones to the independent contractors to the load board. So what right now, unless it's like a really high-paying revenue load that's getting coded as like a 60 to 70% load, and that we need to retool something to make sure we get to cover that high revenue load. All that stuff's getting sent to the independent contractors, and we're keeping the 80% to 100%. So once he's gone through load acceptance, then he goes straight into the actual load planning. And so he's getting through all of our trucks, probably, evaluating all these plans, but he can probably get through planning all of our company assets in probably 15 to 20 minutes at that point. And so after that, it's basically the planners and the whole ops team really just filling gaps through the tactical procurement piece of OD, getting those gaps filled, fixing the day-to-day layovers, and then getting back into OD, because as soon as you put one more load into your system, OD is going to reimagine how it's going to run your network. So one load can be that impactful. So customer service is obviously always booking loads. So you might have a good load score in the morning on a certain load, and then in the afternoon it might not be such a good load score, and then you can send it to the ICs or brokerage, depending on that. So really every decision that's made on loads that are getting booked in make a big difference. So
yeah. And now that we're kind of getting into like steady state, at least for you, I'm sure that you guys had sort of like this like preconceived view. Being able to work with the BCB team definitely probably gave some clarity. But give me a sense of like what was maybe the most surprising or unexpected use cases of this tool set once you got in, versus when you first started and kind of implement the technology versus how you thought you would use the tools.
So I think the coolest piece, and I think again some of you can relate to this, but if you're going into bid season and you get your RFP files from your customers and you wonder which loads you want to bid on. So I don't do anything with pricing currently at all, but I do get questions from current customers like, hey Brock, can you run these 5 loads for me on this day of the week, that type of stuff. So I will actually go in and use that bid tool, and I will put that file in there like that customer doesn't already exist at all, and these are just 5 new lanes at these rates, at these miles, and it'll actually spit back a load score to you on whether or not you can service that load. And so just from a execution standpoint, I think that's been the most surprising, because like in the past, I've had customers reach out and I say, yeah, I want that one, or I want those 2 loads and those 3 loads. Yeah, we're gonna knock it out of the park. And then we just totally fall on our face and we look stupid. So with that bid tool, you actually have a calculated method of approaching that, and you can go in there with some confidence to make sure it's executed upon.
Yeah, another one that I really liked, which is sort of the unintended effects when you get in here, was actually a major customer of yours. When we were first setting up the tool really wasn't covering it. At first we thought it was a problem. Why wouldn't OD sort of cover this major account? And then we started to kind of peel away the onion and maybe sort of grow this like trust that the operational tool doesn't like it, strategic tool doesn't like it. And I think one critical component of why we always view operational efficiency, you have to do it both on the strategic lens and operational lens. So if you deploy the best operational technology in the world, but your strategic contracts aren't where you need it, it doesn't matter. Vice versa, if you have amazing strategic contracts, but then operations drops the ball, it doesn't matter. So handling both sides. Go into a little bit maybe of those conversations that we had about that one core account. It's a big revenue driver, but operational potential nightmare, and kind of how we kind of went through some of those discussions.
Yep, so that was actually really surprising when we went through that, because it's one of our highest paying customers, and CRST is historically we've been predominantly team drivers. We're getting more into the solo space now, but this was a team driver account out of most of our, the biggest areas that we run out of. So like Southern California, Texas, some stuff in the Ohio Valley, some stuff out of Illinois. So, but it's about $35 million in annual revenue is this account. And so we actually put that file through the bid tool, and then through the bid tool you can actually eliminate certain customers to see how how OD would run that network after that. And we found out that we would actually run $2 more million in annualized revenue by eliminating that customer from our network. Now that doesn't mean we just don't run it. We have 300 independent contractors that would love to run that freight. It's got great rate per mile, tons of volume. So, but for some reason it just didn't like the in and out times into certain regions. They just weren't lining up. And so that's why I was never giving it a good load score, because it was actually preferring another customer that had a lower rate per mile because it kept the asset moving more. So that was eye-opening, because a lot of times, I think a lot of folks are guilty of sitting trucks and chasing revenue, and we're guilty of it too. But it's best to just keep that asset running the best you can. The more it's moving, the better off you are.
Yeah, I've loved through the whole process this idea kind of instead of just pushing back, but pushing forward, pushing the project forward, and not viewing these things that you disagree with as, oh, something must be broken, this must not be working, versus what do we need to learn from this to improve our operations? Let's double down in it, let's deep dive. It's also a good analogy of there's not only system processes that need to change, but OD or automation or any sort of AI tool you buy, it's not going to call your customer and negotiate a contract. It's not going to do these things for you, right? If it's a strong enough tool, it can do is sort of expose the issue and it's unbiased. It doesn't care. Maybe there's more nuance to it and why you want to override it, and that's always up to your decision. But kind of taking that sort of next step and saying, let's look into this deeper. It kind of always felt weird, but the revenue, we never talked about it. And then we sort of finally sort of made this joint decision that this wasn't really good for us. And, when I talked about the efficiency numbers earlier, those are incredibly material numbers for a large enterprise operation. That's not 2%. When you're at 20%, it means that you're making big moves to really sort of move the needle. There might be a handful of fleets here who are kind of thinking about technology, thinking about investing in technology. What would be the kind of advice for companies that maybe are on the fence, who are thinking about it, who are maybe starting to dip their toes in conversations about kind of your view in the process, or maybe what they should think about or learn to kind of get over that tipping point?
I think I'm gonna go back to just the way the market is right now, but I think probably a lot of trucking companies got stuck in their ways. We certainly did, with these are the lanes that we price, this is how we run our network, et cetera, et cetera. But it's almost like your OD's just there to give a second opinion on stuff, all the way from the bid process to how it would run your network versus how would a human do it. Another benefit is you can really slim down your planning operation. And so when we had all the regional planners, it was trucks going to Georgia, so then you have a planner that's in charge of the Southeast, and then maybe they're sending a truck to the Ohio Valley, but how is that truck going to get out of the Ohio Valley? There's no ownership there. When you have one planner that's planning an entire network and OD's thinking about it for you, if there's no load in the Ohio Valley, it's not going to send your truck to the Ohio Valley. It's going to tell you to send that truck to that load to brokerage, or have an independent contractor book it in, or something like that. So it's a second brain there for you to utilize, and all the way from the bid process all the way through dispatch. And then you'll gain some efficiencies too on the floor. So we were able to slim down to just, again, one load planner, one daytime load planner, and then reallocate those resources or pieces of the business that needed it. So we needed more freight, so we allocated some of those headcounts into our commercial team. So we can book more loads, so we can keep our trucks moving more efficiently.
Perfect. I think we're right at our time. So I really appreciate the time you guys spent. I'd really implore you guys to spend some time, talking with Brock, the CRST team, the OD team, to just learn a little bit more about technology, even if it's not operational automation, just generally kind of what questions to ask, what to learn. Our goal here is to sort of educate the industry, push it forward. And so really, really, hopefully you guys found the session helpful today. Hopefully you guys have a good rest of your conference, and thanks again for attending.